I grew up on the ocean. My grandfather, who I called Pops, never told me not to love it. He only warned me, far too late, that it doesn't love us back. He never spoke about his time in the war. Not once. Not through birthdays, holidays, or long summers by the shore, until the night he died. His voice was broken, lungs full of salt and cancer, but he made me listen. What he said that night was why he never sailed again. It wasn't guilt that kept him ashore. It was fear. He was a submariner, fought in the Pacific during the war, stayed in uniform after. Most of what he did between 1945 and 1955 never made it to the record books. Some things weren't meant to. After the war ended, reports started filtering through. Missing convoys, abandoned ships, rumours of experimental weapons lost somewhere in the Atlantic. Not Nazi survivors. Relics, technologies no one wanted falling into Soviet hands. His final mission was simple, at least on paper. Locate a lost U-boat rumoured to be carrying experimental sonar weapons. Relay its position to the recovery ships. And get out. The first days were nothing but cold water and false hope. Passive sonar kept pulling back shapes, metallic shadows against the abyss. But every time they checked it, it was the same. Wreckage, cargo ships, geological noise. They weren't alone out there. Pop said they all knew the Soviets were looking too. Every hour wasted was a risk. The officers stopped saying if we find it. They started saying before they do. On the third night, a contact came in stronger, larger, more structured than anything they'd seen. Sonar picked up a strong contact, something large and metallic, lying low near the bottom it seemed. Judging by the size and position, it matched the mission estimates. It could be the wreck they were hunting, but orders were clear. No assumptions. They would need active sonar to be certain. Pops was assigned to double-check the auxiliary stores while final positioning was underway. He moved mechanically through the checks, clipboard in hand, his mind still half on the wreck outside and what it might mean if they really had beaten the Soviets to it. The sub shifted beneath him, a sharp, unnatural jolt that rattled the fittings along the auxiliary deck. A locker door swung open and a heavy black case tumbled out, slamming against the steel deck with a hollow metallic bang. Pops cursed and bent to recover it, the weight of the thing dragging at his arms. As he wrestled it back into the bracket, the unease gnawed at him. The way the sub had moved. It hadn't felt like a normal current shear. It was too sharp, too sudden. But there wasn't time to dwell on it. They had found something nobody even knew existed, and every second counted. He shoved the heavy case back into place, causing a second, louder bang that echoed through the hull. Then he heard it. 3 sharp taps. Faint. Precise. From the outside. Pops didn't say anything when the officer waved off his report about the tapping. That was the way it worked. Keep your head down. Don't spook the crew. Focus on the mission. So he went back to his post, hands steady, heart hammering inside his ribs. The sub crept closer to the wreck. Silent. Passive sonar swept the dark around them, but there was nothing else out there. No engines, no signatures, just the oppressive hum of the deep. But Pop said it felt like the sub was sinking into something. It just felt off. Pressure pressed against the hull from all sides. Not violent. Not yet. Just watching. At 0200, the captain gave the order. One active sonar ping. Quick, sharp, precise. Confirm the wreck. Get the readings. Surface and transmit. The sonar operator hesitated just long enough to make the tension crackle across the control room. Pops caught the captain's eyes, and for a moment, even he looked unsure. But then the captain nodded sharply. "Do it," he said. The pulse rolled out of the bow like a depth charge. A low, building boom that shuddered through the sub's frame and disappeared into the black. For a few seconds, there was only silence. Then, the echoes started coming back. Broken, scattered. The sonar repeater marked uneven timings. Heavy echoes in some places, hollow gaps in others. Not a ship sitting whole on the bottom. Something shattered, strewn across the seabed in a long, broken trail. But buried under the noise, another sound. Faint at first, growing clearer as the echoes bled off. It wasn't mechanical. It wasn't structural collapse. It was a voice. One word.
Why?
For a moment, no one moved. No one breathed. The sonar operator ripped off his headset and threw it across the console. Two petty officers backed away from their stations like they wanted to put bulkheads between themselves and whatever was speaking. Pop said it was the sound of discipline breaking. The instant when a crew stops being soldiers and start being animals trapped in a steel box. The captain barked orders. "Focus! Reacquire target. Maintain station." His voice cracked like a whip, dragging the men back into their chairs. But it was different now. You could feel it. Whatever was out there, it wasn't dead steel anymore. It's like it was watching, listening, and it was asking questions. Pop said there was no real discussion after the voice came through. No conference at the command table. No debate. The captain gave the order flatly, like it was just another part of the checklist. Prepare the second ping. Finish the job. But the crew moved slower this time. Not because they wanted to, but because the sub itself felt different. It was like the pressure outside had shifted. Not heavier exactly, just closer. Pop said everything outside went still. Not right. Not natural. Pop said he focused on his hands. on routine. Anything except the thing waiting outside the hull. The sonar operator checked his readings twice, then 3 times. Pops heard the man muttering under his breath. Not words, just a rhythm, like a prayer. The captain nodded once. The second ping fired, sharper than the first, faster. The sub shook against it. The echoes didn't come back the same way. Instead of spreading out across the seabed, the return slammed into them, solid mass, close, moving. A deep groan rolled through the frame of the sub. Not from them, from something brushing against the hull. The pressure outside shifted again, harder this time. Pop said the walls seemed to bow, just enough to notice. Toward the rear, something screeched. It sounded like metal bending, rivets straining. The lights dipped once, then held steady. The captain barked new orders, reaching for the controls. But as the sub shifted again, he lost his footing and slammed hard into a bulkhead. Pops heard the crack from halfway down the passage. Blood slicked down the captain's face when they pulled him up. Reports started shouting over each other. Stress fractures along the dorsal seam. Minor compression near the rear ballast tanks. Not enough to sink them. Not yet. But everyone knew. Whatever was out there had touched them. And it wasn't gone. Everyone looked to the captain for orders. He pulled out a sealed red envelope himself, cracked it open with bloody fingers, and read it aloud without ceremony. If the wreck was able to be located, they were to deploy a classified beacon. The government wanted to know if the Soviets found the site, even after we had left. He finished with clear orders. Bring up the beacon gear. Pop said you could feel the crew hesitate, but no one disobeyed. The orders were clear. No delay. No discussion. No excuses. Hurt or not, under attack or not, the mission stayed the same. Pop said it was the first time he looked around and realised not all of them were going to make it home. Subs didn't carry drills. Not back then. If you wanted to fire something, you used compressed air. That was how torpedoes launched. Flood the tube, match pressure, blast it out. Simple and brutal. They rigged the beacon onto an old emergency chute. Tied it down fast. The plan was to use the compressed air system to kick it clear of the hull. Drive it hard enough that it would punch down into the seabed on its own weight. Nobody said much while they worked. Pop said it was the quietest he ever heard a crew. Not even breathing heavy. Just working. Almost like men digging their own graves. They double-checked the seals. The XO signed off. Then the captain gave the nod. Lip split. Blood dried on his chin, but still standing. Nobody said it, but everybody knew. If the first 2 pings got a reaction, this would be worse. When the beacon launched, Pop said it felt like a shotgun blast went off under their feet. The whole hull kicked upward. A hollow boom rolled out into the black, deeper and louder than anything they'd made before. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Just the ringing in their ears and the sound of the bulkhead settling. Then the first impact hit, and the sub jolted. Not from the water, not from the currents, but from something hitting them. Metal flexing too far. Alarms screamed from the engineering section. Pressure gauges spiked red. The forward ballast tanks showed signs of structural failure. Pop said it wasn't just a hit. It was like nails dragging along a chalkboard. Pressure hammering the hull in steady, grinding waves. Orders came fast, clipped, half-screened. The crew scrambled to stabilise ballast. Pumps kicked in, trying to keep trim, trying to keep the sub from rolling. Then something tore loose near the aft. Pops heard the sound of shearing metal, the rush of water. A minor breach, but real. Enough to trigger flooding protocols. But Pops knew it was already too late. They sealed off the rear compartments fast, but not fast enough. One man was trapped when the bulkhead doors slammed shut. Pops didn't say his name. He just shook his head. Whatever was out there wasn't finished. It kept circling, brushing, testing the hull, like it was peeling the sub apart layer by layer. Pop said it was worse than hearing torpedoes. At least torpedoes you saw coming. This was slow. Pops told me the sub started to climb, but it wasn't clean the way it should have been. Every inch felt like a fight. They dumped the ballast, filled the tanks with compressed air, did everything by the book, but the sub still dragged like it was caught in something. You could hear the hull plates flexing. You could feel the steel straining. It wasn't just bad luck. It was like something underneath didn't want them to leave. Somewhere deep aft, the hull gave way. Not all at once, just enough. Water again started pouring in, and they lost the lower compartments fast. The torpedo rooms, part of engineering. Pop said the hatches were sealed before the screaming even stopped. There wasn't a choice. You either sealed them off, or the whole ship went down with them. The sub staggered upward, lurching sideways, tilted so bad at times Pop said he had to grab onto the pipes just to stay standing. Everything stank like salt water and burning circuits. Then something hit them again. Not gentle, not testing anymore, like it was trying to tear them apart piece by piece. Pop said you could feel it in your teeth when it struck, like the metal itself was screaming. Somehow, they kept rising. And just before the batteries failed, they broke the surface. Not the way a submarine is supposed to, not clean and sharp. They hit the air half drowned, half dead, and drifting sideways like a busted raft. Pop said it didn't feel like surviving. It felt like being spit out. They got the forward hatch open. Some of them made it topside. Not everyone. Not enough. When Pops pulled himself out onto the deck, he said the whole structure was twisted. Metal peeled back along the sides like somebody had raked claws through the hull. Deep, wide gashes running from bow to stern. They flooded there for hours, the sub bleeding air and water from half a dozen wounds, waiting to see if anything else was coming up after them. Rescue wasn't luck. They were overdue. Command sent out a search as soon as they'd missed their check-in. Pops barely remembered the recovery ship. Just cold hands, bright lights, shouting voices. They made him sign off on a systems failure report. Official word was a ballast malfunction and structural fatigue. Nobody asked about the claw marks. Nobody wanted to. Pop said he never talked about it after that. Not to command, not to family, not to anybody. He said the worst part wasn't the men they lost, or the wrecked steel they left floating behind them. It was knowing that it was still down there, waiting. And sometimes, on calm nights, when the ocean went flat and the sky got too quiet, he could swear he still heard it, tapping. Soft at first, like it was asking if he remembered.
If you made it all the way here, thank you. I'm grateful you spent your time with me. Stay safe until next time.